Hey, Power.
Yeah, what's up?
What's the difference between a gameplay mechanic and a car mechanic?
I don't know. What's the difference?
Well, one you play, the other plays you. or I need a new car mechanic.
No. Oh, shoot. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another lovely episode of Power and Reset. Reset, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you,
ready to talk
Power?
some games, man?
Man, I'm so ready. I'm ready to talk what makes games games.
Are you talking about gameplay mechanics?
That's right. Not car mechanics. We're done with that.
Hey, I do have a little car issue, but we'll talk about that after the show. Great, man. Great. You know, I think gameplay and gameplay mechanics sometimes get confused for each other. Do you know that?
Really?
Do you know what the difference is?
Tell me. I want to know.
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Oh, crap. I was hoping you knew.
No, my understanding of it is gameplay mechanics tend to be the rules of the game, while gameplay can be more of the core nature of the game, right?
Experience.
Exactly. So, for example, if your game is to get the player from point A to B, that's the core gameplay.
That's the gameplay
is that. But the mechanic could be how you do so. Exactly. Are there traps that they have to avoid?
Interesting.
Are there obstacles or enemies, or do they have to do investigation? So, let's just clear that up before we start yapping about.
Before we get into it.
Right. Well, and our listeners can, of course, correct us if we're wrong.
Yeah, and they likely will.
Right.
Well, I've brought something interesting tonight for us to sip on while we dive in to the meat of a gameplay mechanic, and talk all about it. So I've got something special, courtesy of our producer tonight, this is a drink, a liqueur known as Unicum. So you got to say it all together, Unicum.
Unicum.
And so this
honeycomb, but
like honeycomb,
right?
Like like the cereal,
but no milk.
That's what the mascot from the honeycomb cereal drank before those commercials.
Woo! Okay, so what's the deal with this stuff?
So this is a Hungarian herbal liqueur that you usually drink like before or after a meal,
right?
And this has been brought back to us courtesy of our producer.
Great.
But it's kind of got an interesting history because it's like this special, really unique drink. But like there was this crazy period during communism in Hungary where the family that makes this actually was exiled to the States, and they hid here before going back to Hungary to produce it with their secret formula. So this is heavy. It's got some history.
So we're drinking for the whole team right now.
That's right. We're representing a whole lot here. So give it a taste. It's interesting. All right.
Let's see.
It's
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening
and good
to our listeners.
To Power, apparently.
Oh, that's strong. That's good. It's got a sweeter taste to it, huh?
Almost like a licoricey or like a herbal.
Yeah, it's got a syrupy.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's
a really unique drink. It's if you haven't tried it, definitely recommend trying it. But you've got that to sweeten the palate while we dive into.
Oh, it's sweet.
Game mechanics.
My palate is sweetened. Well, now that Reset is done trying to poison me, why don't we get into it a little bit? All right. Before we start, what have you been playing, man? What have you been doing? Huh?
Man, so
what's the new game?
Okay, so I've been doing a couple things on the RPG side. I'm still making my way through the Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel series.
Yes.
So I'm on game 2 now.
Okay.
And I'm really starting to get into the story, and there's some really interesting stuff. So
you start to get more story and less clothing.
That's
what you get.
As with all JRPGs.
Right.
The evolution is less clothes,
yes,
more details. Yeah. I mean, story.
Right. Or both.
But then on the other side, like in my free time, I've been picking up my Switch again, and I'm playing Into the Breach. And I got back into this right after our other episode on Mech Games and all things robot.
Good stuff.
And I still have it, and I was like, you know what, I kind of gotta jump into this because it's a game we kind of glazed over, but and it's a weird game because man, I feel like they almost perfected this like turn-based like strategy little mech game.
Now, is this like a grid turn-based thing? Like
yeah,
tactical grids?
Yep,
Okay.
Yep. So it's this tactical grid, and it's like, it's like robots versus aliens. It's almost a classic Japanese, like, you got the kaiju, and then you got the big robots.
Hell yeah.
But but it's kind of like a roguelike. Like you just, if you die, that's it. You go back and you kind of redo the loop, but you get to pick, like your different customized team. You're like, okay, I want these different robots with these skills. And then you try and rush through this, very, very light on story, more just like trying to get through these levels.
Okay.
And I'm like, man, I'm having a lot of fun with it. Like, it's got this really crisp gameplay, but also it's like, like I play it for like an hour and then that's it. Like, that's all I want to do with it. So it's one of those weird games.
Is that an indie game? I can't recall.
It is, yeah.
Okay, great. Great, man. I love good indie games. When these developers get it right. They point the finger at these AAA developers and are like, hey, man, step your game up. So Into the Breach, I definitely have to try that one. I know we talked about it before, and I've heard nothing but praise. So
it's definitely a lot of fun. I mean, it's you get in it, it's really addictive, and you're unlocking these new like mechs that you can customize your team with once you like die and reset these challenges. But again, it's just one of those. It's like, it's like, okay, then what's the next evolution? Like, it's just this little roguelike, and I always get that, I like binge it a little bit, and then I drop it for a while, and then I pick it up again.
Yeah, it's the switch. That's what you do with it. You binge it, and then you put it in your closet and let it, gather
and then you
dust.
Dust it off.
right. And your Joy-Cons don't work anymore. You're just sitting there wondering why you spent $80 on them.
But they don't charge. But what about you, Power? What have you been playing?
Man, so I've been diving back into a old series of mine, Ninja Gaiden.
Really?
Absolutely. I picked up the new. I don't even know if it's an HD.
Didn't they like release like a collection of it or something?
Yeah, they re-released this game like 5 times, or whatever. Yep. They did the Sigmas. There's Ninja Gaiden Sigma, Ninja Gaiden Black, Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, Ninja Gaiden 2, 3, Blood, whatever, Blood Curl. There's so many different random like versions of this goddamn Blood Curls, whatever it is. And so I finally decided to pick up this collection. It came out, I think, just a few weeks ago. But I was sitting on it because I was like, man, this series is no freaking joke. Like,
so this is like the 3D or like the later collection, right? This isn't like the original.
Man, absolutely. I would never go. So fun fact, right? This is the 3D series. So the first one came out on Xbox, OG Xbox, and then the second one came out, I think, on 360, and the third one came out either on, I think it was Xbox 360 as well. I can't recall. But nevertheless, if you beat the first one, right, there are these items that are scattered throughout the levels, and you can collect them. They're hard to find. But if you collect all of them, you unlock the OG Ninja Gaiden from, I think it was Super NES or something like that. Yeah,
from the original
series. The original one, like, which nobody wants, like, because that game's impossible. Like, if you can play it on your Switch for free. It's on that like
Nintendo Pass
store thing, and like it is impossible, man. Like, I do not know how people beat those games.
I mean, we tried it one night. We were in there, and it's it's one of those where it's like if you move and then you move back, and the frames you said the enemies respawn.
They just pop back up.
So like you try and make a jump, and all of a sudden like bat just spawns out of nowhere and just
even
knocks
worse,
you into the oblivion.
It's one of those games where when you get hit, it moves your character. So if you're mid jump, you're like, you get hit and you're bounced back into the pit. Like it's talking about mechanics, man. That's some BS. So anyway,
the only thing they didn't change between the original and that 3D version, though, is how dang hard it was. That game.
It's hard as hell, man. I just beat the first one, and so the first one I think has something like 18 to 20 chapters, which are just levels. And it was a nightmare. There are some bosses in this game that make me curse the developers to this day. I literally at one point looked at my PlayStation 5 controller and I was like, it's only $60 if I smash this across my head. If I just, put my head through my TV, the game is hard. Like, and it's frustrating. Like, there are certain bosses where the mechanics are just, they're so cynical. They hate the player. It's basically like, okay, you're fighting a giant a giant snake creature, and you're on a tiny little island. So you maybe have like if Ryu Hayabusa, who's the main character, is standing on this island, you got 2 feet one way, 2 feet the other way. So you can't really jump anywhere.
No room for anything.
No room for anything. So the only thing you can maybe do is if you're on one edge, dive over to the other side. Meanwhile, these 2 giant snake things are shooting blasts at you, trying to bite you from the platform, swooping. So you have to just jump straight up. You can't jump any direction. You just fall off. You fall into like some lava or whatever the hell. And it's just a pain in the ass. I mean, complete pain in the ass.
See, now that game though is a great example though of a certain type of that like 3D action mechanics.
Yes.
Because like now that that is a punishing game, but that is a game where right now I haven't played it in a long. I don't think I've played it since like the original Xbox. But this is a game right where you could get different weapons.
Oh yeah,
and like
absolutely.
right, and there were like it was different style too. Like it wasn't just a sword; it was like different, like
straight up
different sword, different types of weapons, like a spear or something. And it changed the style of how you would try and fight these bosses.
Absolutely. There are weapons in that game that will increase your agility. So, for example, the main weapon, the sword, will allow you to jump towards an enemy, and you'll basically just dash right through them. You'll be behind the enemy in 2 seconds, and their head will be rolling on the ground. That won't work on the tougher enemies, like the bigger, heavier set enemies. They just don't take that much damage. So you're sitting there like, what the hell? And they'll literally grab you out the air. So then you gotta break out your Buster Sword, which is like a slightly smaller version of Cloud Sword from Final Fantasy VII. Big weapon. Heavy duty sword, and that one will break through any armor. It'll knock the heavy guys on their asses, and you can finish them off. So it's one of those games where like I can't give them enough credit. That combat system, even for that original one out of the trilogy, is incredible. It's so well balanced that like no matter what situation you're in, you could be getting slapped by 10 enemies. The developers put a way in there for you to defeat all of them easily if you can find it. And it's just all about like, okay, which weapon am I supposed to be using? Am I supposed to be using the environment in this particular section? Like, and once you figure that stuff out, you not only do you feel badass, but like you respect the game more because you're like, okay, so you're not just holding my hand. Yeah. Like, so I beat that first one. I started the second one, and the second one's pretty easy so far. Honestly, it doesn't have the same level of difficulty. It's not as technical, I believe, as that first one. It's way more flashy. They have these awesome executions. You pop a guy's arm off. He's sitting there holding where his arm was, and then you slash and chop his head in half. Or something. You know, it's got all these cool, flashy kills, but the game itself is a lot easier. I think it's lost a little of its quote-unquote Razor's Edge, which is actually the subtitle for one of the games. I think the third one. But it's still really good, and it is a really tough game. It's just that first one was punishing, man. It was punishing.
Now let me ask you this, though, because, like, all right, so to me, I'm going to make a parallel here, because to me, when I think of, like, Ninja Gaiden, and I think of, like, really hard 3D, action fighting games.
What did you call it?
Ninja Gaiden.
What did you just call that thing?
Okay. Are we gonna get into Ninja Gaiden versus Ninja Gaiden?
No.
Listen. When we do our Straight from Japan episode, I'll be like, "Konnichiwa, minasan, Ninja Gaiden no video game ga."
There we go. Hey, that's next episode, right?
Yeah, you got the tickets, right?
Oh shit.
I said I'd get the hotel, man.
We don't hate, we don't discriminate. Ninja Gaiden, Ninja Gaiden, Ninja
but
Gaiden. I don't care what anybody says. You know, the games are awesome. We botch titles in America. That's what we do. Like any Japanese game, we botch. So,
but all right. So, because the second I think of that game, I also start thinking of Dark Souls, which is different. It's so much slower. It's a lot more like deliberate.
Yes.
It's like it's got a very different pace.
Totally.
But it's another health bar, like stamina, different weapons. Mm-hmm. But there's this big difference to me because you look at like action games like Ninja Gaiden. And it's like you get all these different weapons, and at any time you can be like, I'm gonna equip this one now, and this is a different style, and maybe this is what I need for these enemies.
Yes.
But then you have a game like Dark Souls where they give you so many different weapons and so many different pieces of armor and like ways to approach their like gameplay mechanic of this like very methodical dodge, like attack, block.
Right.
But then they're like, okay, but we're going to give you this really limited amount of items that you need to power up your weapons. And if you don't, you're going to be screwed on some of these bosses. Yeah. So you can't, like there's so many different, there's whips, there's spears, there's, swords, there's hammers. But you're really only going to be able to use, like, one type of them without screwing yourself or just making it harder than the easy person can handle.
I see how you draw that parallel. It's similar in a lot of ways where it's like, the developers give you the tools, but they expect you to... See, it's funny because... if I was going to say that Ninja Gaiden was like a From Software game, I would say it was comparable to Sekiro. Because
that makes sense, yeah.
Sekiro is... So the difference between Dark Souls, for those who don't know, and Sekiro is there's no armor, there's no stats. So, like, whereas Dark Souls, if you really, really suck, you can go farm souls, get stronger. Sekiro, they don't play that. Like, the only way you can get stronger is by beating the boss, and then you get, like,
by getting
good. By getting good. And, like, so, for that game, the director basically was like, I just want you to master these mechanics. That's it. Master the parry and apply it to every combat scenario and, like, win that fucking shit. Like, whereas with Ninja Gaiden, it's also the same thing. It's like... Even though you have different weapons, you can't power him up. Like okay, so you can technically increase your health bar. You can technically power the weapons up to 3 levels, but by the end, you're capped. There's like no way to like power up to an unlimited degree like you could in Dark Souls. So like at some point, you gotta just whichever weapon you want. You still got to master that dodge, that dive roll, that block, that counter.
And then ultimately that parry. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's actually on my list of what I think are some of the most fun gameplay mechanics is the parry from Sekiro.
Yes.
Because it is so essential to how that game is played. But it is also one of the most rewarding gameplay mechanics where you go in and it's like, like you said, the gameplay, you got to fight your way through. You got to get to these bosses. But the mechanic is you got to be able to master just seeing it coming and seeing that attack and saying,
Exactly. I think we can actually say that in terms of Sekiro, if let's say you play that game all the time, right? And you quote unquote master that mechanic. So when I played that game, I played it nonstop. So I feel that I had mastered it. But there'd be days where I would wake up and I'd be a little tired. I'd get off work, I come play, I'm a little exhausted. And the grunts would wipe the floor with me. That's a gameplay mechanic. Like when you can't just like sleep through it, like, okay, maybe I've played Need for Speed, for example, 1,000,000 times, and I can still win a race half sleep. Like Sekiro's like, you better be like awoke, you better be ready, like you gotta be like on your shit, because like if you make one mistake, there's no like, oh, I'll just guard the next one. It's like, no, my health is gone. Like I am dead. Like,
well, and that's something. See, that I think is interesting because that's something I feel that is a big like topic in gameplay mechanics these days, is that being able to sleep through it.
Yeah.
And I get that, like, there's so many different like gamers out there. Right. People have their own style. Some people like they want something that you can
challenge
like them. That is a challenge. Some people don't. Like they're like, look, I go to work all day, I have kids, or I'm doing this, or I'm like traveling, They're like, I just want to be able to unwind and let off steam and have fun. But like that, like I think that's interesting because I think back to the arcade days, right?
Yeah.
And when you used to go to arcades, the gameplay mechanics were punishing because they wanted your quarters. You know, like you just kept paying because you had to get good, and the better you got, the further you got in the levels. You're scoring up. You're starting to hit that leaderboard,
right?
And then that made you want to put even more money in.
Right.
And so the mechanics were like, at first, you are not going to be good at this game, and you'll have to practice and you'll have to work at it, and then you will get mastery of this mechanic.
And that was even like the reward back then was like, yeah, sure, you beat the game. But the true reward was like you would look around and people would be looking at you play because they couldn't believe
you would get a crowd around you, just like amazed that
you're a master. Yeah. Like, holy crap, how did you? And you would look at them and you'd be like, man, I'm great, and I also spent $500 on this machine. Like, I spent all of my money playing. I
can't do laundry because all my quarters are gone.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I think Yeah, there's different temperaments for that stuff. Personally, I love a good difficulty. So, like, I love games like Sekiro and Dark Souls and all that stuff. But, like, yeah, there are definitely times where you just don't have the patience. You just can't, and there's a fine balance. Like, there's always the sweet spot in gaming, I really believe, is that balance where something is difficult, but it does not require 100% of your attention like Sekiro would. But also, it has to be a fun mechanic. It can't just be like, press A to win, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, but that balance is hard to find.
Well, it's interesting you talk about balance, because this is going to be a pivot. Are you ready for this? This is because I'm about to compare these games to another game, Mario Odyssey.
Okay.
Because this is a game, talking about like games where you want to be on it, and you want to be like, you want that difficulty, you want that challenge. So I don't know. Did you play Mario Odyssey?
Oh yeah, I beat the hell out of that game.
So did I, and that's a game that's like for younger audiences. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of people, even at younger ages, they will be able to beat that game.
Right.
But then, if you go on YouTube, there is a mode called like the balloon hunt or something like that that they added to it, and it is like you start somewhere and you have a certain amount of time to get to a balloon, and there's like a leaderboard for these times where like it shows you like the person who created this got there in like 6 seconds.
Right.
And I've watched, and these people are like gods of this game. They have these mechanics down where it's like jump off this, hop, do a double flip this way to fly off this, to bounce, to like control this.
They're doing
like that guy
with
to
the
become
Joy-Cons.
like electricity.
Right.
And then like in 6 seconds, they've flown the entire way across the map using this like button combo that would rival like fighting games. and it is like that blows my mind, because this is a game where it's like we could beat that game in their sleep.
Exactly.
But also there's another layer to it.
There's another layer for sure. I love it. People were doing that stuff way back with Mario 64 too. Speedrunners were doing all sorts of goofy stuff to get through those levels. Backflipping off of certain walls and bouncing, wall jumping. Like I was like, man, these guys, like y'all got too much time. But it was awesome. It was awesome. I love that extra layer on any game, and a lot of games don't have that. Like there are a lot of games where you just can't break it. For example, like with skill, it is what it is, and so. Credit to those guys, but not every game has to be difficult. The mechanics don't have to be tied to difficulty. Sometimes it's just tied to the player's ability to put two pieces of clues together, or to explore like a space and determine the best course of action. And I think one of the best games that like did this was Portal 2. Oh, Portal 2 was like. My brain has not been fucked this hard since. Oh my God. Like Portal 2 whipped it out, stuck it in my ear, and just was like, this is what you gotta figure this out. Like it went from the most simple thing, right, where you walk into a room and it's like, okay, I gotta get over there. So you have a portal gun. You've played it. You shoot the wall, you shoot behind you, you walk through, you're on the other side. Cool. Awesome. That's easy. Then they start throwing items in there. They start throwing momentum in there. Like that mechanic is probably one of the
like surface things you can code. That game is a mastercraft in like puzzle solving and like presentation, but also in that like building the mechanic. Like saying, okay, let's start simple. You have a portal gun. It makes portals. You can put one side of the portal here, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay. We're gonna put an item in that you need to move around.
Right. Or there's maybe there's an obstacle that moves. So now timing is part of it as well. Like you got to put your portal on the obstacle, but you got to jump through the portal only when that obstacle is at this
where you want.
Things like that are incredible. And again, there are guys who play that game and figure that stuff out in 2 seconds, and they figure out their own ways to. So, like, the layer in that one, I love it. I think, I'm shocked we haven't gotten a third one yet.
And now that game is so impressive to me because they also have a co-op.
Yeah,
and so they said
too,
they also made a whole nother set of puzzles that you needed 2 people. So they're like, here are these portal puzzles that you can only do with 2 people working in cooperation with 2 sets of portals, and then you can solve these puzzles. And that is just, I mean, like how do
it's hard enough to get
how much
one
time
genius.
was put into
Like now we need 2.
Like some intern did not get paid enough.
Right.
Like, what if we do?
You know what? We'll have to do a little playthrough of that together. Reset and see if we can figure that thing out. You know, we're old now, but can we still? Like, do we still have what it takes?
And we'll have to do it non-edited. Like
that's
we're
what
not
I'm saying.
like we're gonna let people watch and see. They're gonna be like staring at us like, oh my god, just put the
idiots.
portal there. These suck.
And we'll just keep drinking, and we'll solve the portals faster the more we drink. So,
but you know what I love about like the portal gun is like to me that was like because like that was this sort of evolution on a cool idea that came up in Half-Life, which was the gravity gun. Back when physics engines were first becoming a thing, and like the idea that like you could interact with the environment and like things would move based on like forces, like based on like you push it moves, like you hit it breaks. And you had this gun that could just lift stuff around, and at that time it was mind-blowing. It was like, what?
And it still is in some ways, I mean, honestly.
But that was one of those mechanics that just, I mean, it gave you endless options, like figuring out the crazy clever stuff you could do to achieve your objective was just...
I mean, you look at games like Breath of the Wild. They took from that and were like, okay, here we go. Like, we'll give you like the ability to roll this boulder.
Yeah, they turned it into like
roll it down in a way. Yeah, exactly.
The
magnet gun, everything. Like, they kind of borrowed from those guys, and the mechanic just holds up. It's good for different puzzles and keeps you engaged. Just an interesting mechanic that's not. I feel like it's not used a lot, honestly. And there are other good there are other good puzzle games, like Catherine, for example, is an awesome. They have the blocks. It's like I don't want to say Tetris. I don't even know what to compare it to. But, you're climbing the tower. You're pulling blocks out to climb. And different blocks have traps associated with them. There are blocks you cannot move. So, like, you have to figure out how to get higher. And of course, all the while, there's some creature trying to climb and kill you. So, you're racing against the clock. And that's awesome. But it doesn't lick the boots of those portal puzzles.
No.
Those portal puzzles are just something else, man. I don't know what else to say about them. But
and there's just like I think to me that's one of these like the question, and I don't know the answer, but there's this weird thing where it's like and we've talked about Breath of the Wild a little bit before, and to me again like that game or a game like Portal, they just have such crisp mechanics and the gameplay is so much fun, and just like figuring out the crazy stuff you can do and experimenting is so much fun. But then, like, you think about it, and the story is, like, it takes a wayside. Like, the focus of the game is, like, this mechanic that we've perfected. And, like, and the cost is that is the focus. Whereas then you take these, like, more hybrid games. And to me, I think of, like, Tomb Raider. Where it's, like, it's a puzzle game, essentially. You go into these areas, you're like, okay, I have to, like, drag things here. I have to set this timer off, pull this lever, that opens, or, like, Uncharted or something where it's, like, you really, like, you have to figure out how to get through an area. But then that's interspersed with, like, combat, like, shooting or, like, mechanics. Fighting. Like, it's, it brings together, like, there's, like, chase or race scenes, quick time events. So it's, like... And the story is baked in. Like, there's also, like, story elements going on. It's more cinematic.
Exactly.
But, like, when I think of, like, that perfect mechanic of, like, Portal, it's so much more fun than, like, Uncharted or Tomb Raider. But when I'm like, man, I want to play, like, a movie. Like, I want a real, like, I want an adventure story.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to put in Portal.
Yeah, exactly. It treads a fine line. Like, nobody would ever argue that Portal had a great story or anything. I mean, that the AI lady or villain, voice was incredible.
Oh yeah,
and her lines were funny.
Awesome. But
who cares? Like, there's no character development, nothing like that involved. But it's like an old school like if I busted out my SNES and I popped in a game, I know I'm not getting any plot. I'm just getting pure mechanics. And they owned up to that. They made a game with pure mechanics that just, I think, worked better than most games that I've played. And it's just if you have not played that game, that is a game you need to play if you're a mechanics-based player. Like, you won't get any story. It's not going to be Half-Life 2, but man, the puzzles will leave you scratching your head. So anyway, so on that note, I'm gonna pivot us again.
Yeah.
To a different type of mechanic that
I'm ready.
like.
I'm on the heel. I'm ready to spin.
You know, sometimes what I enjoy, we were talking about story. I do love story in games. I love when actors get to take the role, especially now in these newer games, of a character, and they really bring that character alive. Nathan Drake, Kratos, like there's just some great characters, and these actors and voice actors just. But that's not enough when you don't have a good gameplay mechanic, whether it be combat or whatever. So like one of the games that I played this, I guess it's been 2 years now ago, is Detroit Become Human. Mm-hmm. And that game's mechanic lies in timing, basically. Timing and reflex, which I love. Like, you could be in a situation in that game, for the listeners who have not played it, it's a story-driven game about you play as 3 different android protagonists who are basically enslaved by the human race. And so you're making choices for them, and sometimes the choices come so sporadically and so intensely that, like, somebody might run at you with a knife, and you've got basically your brain splits in 2 because there's one part of you that's seeing the screen and it's putting up an arrow that says move, move.
And you're like, I need to press it.
I just need to press it. And then there's another side where you're actually thinking about the situation. And so there'll be times where somebody, maybe they don't run at you with a knife, but they pull a gun on you. And so your option, you'll see on the screen, it'll say gun, like reach for your gun and shoot, or like talk or whatever. And there's a timer. Because there's only so much time to make the choice, and that mechanic, I feel like I haven't made choices like that in another game since. Like the choices that I make are so sincere and personal because I don't have time to like, I want to play the hero. Like you just
have to react,
clicking whatever. So like my first playthrough of that game was like so honest, and actually my ending was rough. Like, but I loved it. I love those mechanics. Personally, those seem to bring out like the most. It brings the truth out of me, and as I play the game, so I love that. And there are other games like that. Heavy Rain, same developers.
Yeah, there's like what was that horror game with Rami Malek was like
Until Dawn.
Until Dawn.
Yep, that's another one. Even I would say some of the Telltale games like what's that show? Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, games like Life is Strange. These are other games that, even though they don't rely as heavily on it, they're really more like slow burn story. They will throw that stuff at you too, so you'll get comfy. I'm gonna be talking about playing music at this party, and all of a sudden somebody's pulling a gun at you on you at the party, and you got to make a quick choice that like determines what's gonna happen in the rest of that game.
Yep.
So like, man, when you talk about mechanics like that impact the player, those hit hard. There's no restart on those, right?
Yep.
So like, unlike Portal or any of these other games where it's like, okay, yeah, I failed the Portal or it took me a while. This impacts your story. Like that's like, if you're playing this for the story, that's it. Like you made your choice. The game's gonna auto save, and then you're stuck with it. And that mechanic to me is awesome. Like,
and what I love is, so to me, right? So like those games were kind of like this like cool evolution in storytelling that brought like quick time events to a new level. Because like for a long time, quick time events have been like a part of games where it's like in a more cinematic element. You know, it's like show up and it's like press this button.
Yeah.
And like, in the past it was like you either pressed it and you did it, or like you failed and you had to redo it again until you like actually got through it. Like a la old God of War on like the PS2, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But like they really took and they said, we're like, we can take this cinematically based like gameplay mechanic and we can pivot it into these like really great story games.
Absolutely.
But I have to mention, because like I'm thinking of QuickTime events, I have to mention my favorite QuickTime event of all time, and this is in the Spider-Man game. And I'm talking the original Spider-Man game. I think this was like PlayStation 2.
Okay, so the one that was based off the movie, the original movie.
This is the one based off the original movie.
Yeah.
This was the one that had like Bruce Campbell was like the narrator for it.
Hell yeah.
And and you swung off of the invisible like just out of the air. Like it was before they had the technology to do the web swinging.
Yes.
But they had there's a QuickTime event. I'm pretty sure it's in this game. If not, listeners, read me for it. But there's a moment where there's a bomb. and there's a quick time event. Spoilers if you by this point, like 20 years later, you haven't played this old game, but there's like a bomb going off and there's this hostage and she's like tied up to it. The things are exploding. You're trying to get to it and you swing in and there's a quick time event. And if you don't press it, Spider-Man face plants on the ground and it zooms in on this lady and she's just like, oh God. And then everything blows up and you fail.
I think that's Spider-Man 3, I'm pretty sure.
No, is it really?
I think so.
No.
I feel like it was. But I know the scene because like the lady's face, like listeners, you should, if you don't know what we're talking about, please look it up. Screw you animators. Her face was hideous. They made her look gaunt. She was like, ugh. She looked like she had just face planted.
It was Spider-Man 3.
Was it 3?
Way.
Yeah. I think
her
it was
face
3.
looked so bad. I thought it was the first one.
No, man, that's the crap. That's the sucky thing about it. We had Spider-Man 2, and then we got that, and it was like, what the hell happened, guys? Yeah, that was a funny quick time event. I'm not gonna lie. I totally forgot even Spider-Man had those in there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is, but speaking of Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man. So we're talking like Spider-Man beautiful. And Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Yes.
One of the most fun gameplay mechanics in like modern gaming. The web slinging.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just
Yeah. I mean, the developers took their time with it. So like no more swinging off clouds. Like you got to have a building around. You know, you're doing tricks to increase your momentum, and depending on your height or how low you dip when you swing, you're jumping higher, you're releasing higher. Even just releasing the web like gives you a different type of momentum going into like the next action. And it's the best swinging they've ever done. I mean,
this is like a decade in like through different Spider-Man games, and like when they first were like, all right, you swing off of buildings, and now
you don't swing at all. I remember when you couldn't swing at all. They've
got, I mean, just like the fluidity of it. Yeah, you can do tricks in midair. There's different ways to swing off of the buildings. You combine that with different actions.
Absolutely.
And it just, I mean, like when I first picked up that Spider-Man game, the amount of time I think I spent just swinging. Just like swinging around the city. And it was so much fun.
We were talking about that sweet spot. There it is, right? Yep. Like this is a game where like swinging is simple, but you can master it. There are races in that game that I couldn't even get close to completing, but other people could master that swing. But it also was so rewarding regardless, and it was so fun, and it also tied deeply into the character, which I would argue is the story, because you're playing a Spider-Man, so they had to make you feel like the animation. This is what
Spider-Man is.
This is what he is. He is the web slinger. And so you're swinging and you're contorting in the air and doing all these awesome things. Like that is the sweet spot right there, baby. Like that game, that mechanic, the swing mechanic. You're right. I platinumed that game when it first came out because I just couldn't stop playing. I was like, you
didn't want it. Like you finished the story and you're like, but I need to keep
more.
swinging.
Yeah, there's more reasons for me to swing. I don't think you understand. And like, man, we are not even talking about combat, but like the combat was awesome as well. Like, you know, not too difficult, but it gave you so much because you could swing. You'd be swinging at enemies, jump in the air, swing away.
It gave you those different moves, and you could kind of level up and figure out your style, like how you wanted to fight.
It's true. Man, I love that game. You know, and actually, I'm gonna give a shout out then to Spider-Man 2 on PS2 because the one mechanic that game had that the new one did not was there was a way to, I think you tapped both triggers and he would release both webs like from each hand.
That's right.
And you could do that launch. And that I remember thinking like when I first did that, I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done in a video game. Like, so like, man, those guys making those Spider-Man games, they've been kicking some serious butt. Even though I don't know. Actually, Insomniac, I think, were the guys who did the new ones. I think that's the Ratchet and Clank guys.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah, and Activision, they were the ones.
They were the old.
But they all knocked it out of the park. All those guys. Speaking on combat, real quick, because we can't talk about mechanics and not talk about good combat, right?
Yes.
I gotta bring up a game that most people probably have never heard of, Power Stone. All right, so Power Stone 1 and 2 came out for the Dreamcast. It's an arena fighter, 3D fighter, where you can run around, collect items and stuff. So it had there's two pieces to this, right? There are weapons, there are fruits and foods and all sorts of crap you could be picking up throughout a level. And so like the food would give you your health back mid-fight. A weapon you would pick up it'd give you like a certain attack. Like if you pick up a sword, you swing it, maybe it does more damage than your regular combo. Who knows? But that was one thing. So you got these two fighters battling it out, all trying to collect weapons and battle and stuff. But then they had the Power Stones themselves, right? The Power Stones basically allowed each individual fighter to transform into like a super form. But it wasn't like Super Saiyan, right, from Dragon Ball Z, where it's just like, I'm Super Saiyan, my moves are the same, but I'm just faster and strong. It's like your character would turn into a giant, like, bladed spider like creature, you know, or like
a proper like transformation.
Yes, a full
unique ability for every character.
One character who basically he was like I think he was a plane pilot, right? And like, you know, he's like the main character of the series, Falco. He's a boxer. That's like his thing. So when you fight, you know, he has like a bunch of cool boxing moves. But then when he transforms, his body becomes like the suit. I guess the only thing I can compare it to is like he becomes like Iron Man. Like he gets this suit with like that can fly and shoot missiles like out of its hands and all this cool stuff. Like it was awesome because again, like there are many fighting games where you can transform. Dragon Ball Z being one of the top ones, where when you transform, nothing else happens. Right? You look cooler, but like you're doing the same stuff. Whereas this game, like you would transform and all of a sudden you could fly. So like your opponent would freak the hell out.
Yep.
Their goal would be, now the mechanics have changed. In mid-fight between two actual players, the mechanics change because the other opponent now is like, I have to just run.
I have to get away.
I just have to survive until they run out of power. Like, and then the second game was 4 players, so that just kicked it even to another level. Just an awesome series, you know.
Yeah,
but I got to give him credit for those Power Stones.
So, in speaking of combat, there's a realm of games that we haven't really kind of leaned into yet. That there's a couple games specifically I'm thinking of that I kind of want to talk about, but we haven't really gotten into the shooter.
Yeah,
realm. We talk a lot of action games,
yeah,
a lot of, but,
absolutely.
You know, so there's third person and there's first person shooters. And this is another mechanic, and the mechanic itself, is kind of pretty, like, it's straightforward. Either you're a third person shooter or you're a first. But there are a few games that took, they took and they said they gave it a element,
little tang,
that really,
twist.
That really twisted. And to me, one that always stands out to me in like the third person shooter will be the Gears of War active reload.
Oh yeah. The active reload was amazing. I mean, such a simple little mechanic. Cliffy B lost his damn mind. Let me just say that.
It's such a small thing.
It's such a small.
But just to think that, when like it just because like in any game, like, and I want, like, listeners, I challenge you, find me other games that have taken the reload mechanic and made it like active, made it dynamic. But in this game, you had a small amount of bullets. I mean, if you were in a shotgun, you had like 5 shots.
Right.
You're like machine gun, like, and you could just see those bullets counting down. It had such a satisfying, like, visual element. And then you had to reload, and you're in the middle of a fight. And this is the moment that made or broke the person you were fighting, because both of you're fighting, you both run out of ammo, and then this little bar starts sliding across the screen. And if you push the button right at this perfect time, you reloaded with extra damage.
Absolutely.
But if you missed it, this little sliver, if you missed it, you jammed the gun, and now your reload takes even longer, and you're screwed.
This is one of the only games that actually led me to waste bullets, right? Because for example, you would pick up that sniper. I'd pop that sucker right away.
Right off.
Just to get the active reload on there. Because the difference was, if I shot you with the sniper in a normal scenario, it hit you and you do a little damage. Yeah. The active version, when I get that active reload, you're going down instantly. It's like an instant kill. Yep. Like, so you're waiting, you're popping off. People knew, I heard that. And you're sitting there trying to get it right. But if you missed it, if you miss your opportunity at that active, it was like, you might as well just put the butt of the gun in your mouth. You know what I mean?
Just quit.
Yeah, just quit.
Just leave.
Because you just lost some ammo.
If your team didn't have you.
Yeah, literally. Like, everybody would be looking at you like, what the hell are you doing, man? Drop the sniper. Like, put that down. That active reload is one of the best mechanics I've ever experienced in a shooter, for sure. And it's so simple. It was such a small, tiny thing.
I had never seen anything like this before. No. Maybe if it's out there, I don't know of it. Because for me, that was the first time, and it was like this risk reward. Because you didn't have to touch it. When you reloaded, you could just let your gun reload. But you could gamble. You could try like, am I good enough?
Yeah.
And you could get a fast reload within this bar. Like there, it was like this bar and this little marker slid across, and there was like this little section. And in it, if you clicked in the section, you could reload faster.
I mean, it had
but
a great
there was
sound,
a little sliver, and that was that special active reload that gave you that perk.
Had a nice glow to it when you clicked it right. You'd see that bullet just shining. Whoop,
You'd see those little flashes, and you knew you were like, all right, let's bring it on.
I can take a whole team. I swear. Yeah. Gears of War, great game. You know what? Okay, so we're gonna talk about shooters. There are two that I want to mention real quick.
Yes.
And this actually it kind of joins the hands of shooter and stealth.
Okay.
Right. So number one, Splinter Cell, where the mechanic is basically getting through the level, getting to your objective and completing it. It has nothing to do with killing anyone. It doesn't even have anything to do with knocking people out. It just, you have an objective and you have to do it. But they put all these guards and villains and criminals or whoever the hell in your way, and it's up to you to pathfind through these maps. Whether that means like you're jumping on like the plumbing, the pipes in the air, or whatever the hell, and you're crawling through like a tiny tunnel or some vents, or you get to pick, but that was your choice. That was the mechanic. And also on that same front, Hitman, like the Hitman series, same thing. Like both of these games, you could pull out a AK and just start lighting people up if you want.
Or you could kill nobody. You could go through
and the reward again, like to do it that way was like you felt like you were Sam Fisher, or Agent I think 47, right? Like you felt epic, like So Splinter Cell, or not Splinter Cell, I'm sorry, Hitman did it even better because at the end of, I think it was Hitman 1 or 2, they would you would see a newspaper and it would recap what you did on your mission. So it'd be like, 10 incredible. Killed and such and such. But if you didn't do anything, like the newspaper would be like, it was a normal day and such died of a heart attack. And you'd be sitting there snickering in your couch like, no, he didn't.
Now, I feel like that is an underrated thing in video games, is the reward. Like, basically that little bit at the end where they're like, here's what you did and why you are a badass.
Yes,
that is an underrated component.
Absolutely.
But kudos to games like Hitman, because that is a game, right? Like altogether, I mean, in a Hitman game, there's probably 4 to 6 levels or something.
Yeah, usually there's only a few. Yeah,
but it's like there's so many options. There's so many choices that you could play that same level 8 times and have a completely different experience and a completely different result every time.
Yes.
Because that is how they've built that gameplay. They've taken that mechanic.
Absolutely. I mean, you could take the disguise if you're like, let's say you're on a yacht. You can kill like whoever owns the yacht, take the disguise and start like walking around, or you don't kill them, you knock them out, or maybe you drug their drink and they just pass out. You don't even touch them. Like, there's just so many like awesome elements to that game, and it's like kudos to those guys for thinking of all that stuff and making all those mechanics work together, because you would think that game would be riddled with glitches and errors, like, because there's just so many options.
Because there's so much you can do.
Yeah.
How do you account for all that?
Exactly.
But to refine something like that,
again, a perfect balance. And I've yet to play Hitman 3, but that's why that series continues, because there's nothing like it. Those mechanics are solid. You got any honorable mentions for me, Reset?
Okay.
Any honorable mentions? And throw them at me.
I do. So a couple, before we wrap up here, there are a few gameplay mechanics close to my heart, and I'm going to segue into it by talking about one that I think is actually more popularly liked, which is the chipset system from Nier Automata.
Oh, okay.
Which now this is a game I'm glad, because I've only played the beginning so far, so I actually can't appreciate the depth of this, but I've seen it, and I know that in this game, if you want nothing about this game, I'm going to talk about like the chipset system a little bit. So a spoiler warning, I guess, for any Nier fans out there.
Yes.
But so this is like an upgrade system that kind of dictates like your strength, like the different like powers, like, how to increase or decrease different stats and abilities. And it was this cool like you put these chips into your memory, and you had this certain amount of space to work with, and you had to slot in different things that took up space to like get those bonuses. But the coolest thing about it to me was when you start the game and when you first learn, okay, I get to put these chips in, and that's gonna like, you know, change my character, give me like a bonus or something. There was this chip called the OS chip.
Yes.
And it's just like, I think it even gives you this warning, and you're like, what is this? This is they're like, don't remove this.
Right.
But you can. You're like, well, all right, like, what if I do?
Yeah.
And you remove it, and it's like an instant game over.
Yep.
Like, that's it. It just instantly, it's one of the, like, bad endings or something. It just instantly cuts.
Absolutely.
And man, I love that idea. I think it was so cool. And when I looked at it, it instantly made me think of a game we've talked a little bit about, Mega Man Battle Network.
When you said chips, I thought we were going there right away, right? We took the long road, okay? We're on our path to Mordor right there, right?
We segue through another mechanic that is up there.
The chips in Mega Man Battle Network were like, that was a true mechanic, because you're sitting there like, it was like collecting Pokemon cards, or you're building a deck that you needed, and we talked about this in a episode before this, but you were building a deck that was critical to success because every boss was different, every battle was different. Even your character could be different depending on what Mega Man you had. You know, and so you had to build these awesome decks with those chips, but you only had so much space.
and so you had folders, but you only had so many, so you had like 2 or 3 folders, and each folder you could have like a different deck. But the thing is, I mean, it was like random. It was like drawing cards in a game where you don't know what you're gonna get.
You have no idea.
But there's certain combinations where if you load these chips in the right order, they power up and you get a whole new ability. And this was complemented by something that to me was like a proto version of the Nier chipset like upgrade system, which was the memory upgrades. And so in Mega Man, you had this. It was this like Rush Hour looking board, and I'm talking about like the puzzle game, not the action movie. This like Rush Hour where it's this like block board, and then you had these Tetris chips that you could put in there that were like extra HP or like extra attack power, but they all had those different classic like Tetris shapes. They were like the line or like the little you know zigzag, the T. And you had to figure out how to like put these into this board so that you could maximize the amount of upgrades you got. It was just these little elements that all came together for this amazing experience. But that is my honorable mention. What about you, Power?
So I'm going to slam you with 2 quick ones, right? I love, these are 2 series that I love and we could do whole episodes on. Number 1, I loved the Sphere Grid from Final Fantasy X, right?
The Sphere
Grid was just awesome, right?
What a new way to level up.
It was sweet. We were accustomed to the old simple way of just battling, getting experience points, boom, leveling up, getting a move, right? The Sphere Grid toppled that. Like, it just was like, okay, you want to level up? Choose what you want. Like, because in the American version, we got the standard, whatever the basic Sphere Grid was. The international version, you got to choose like where you want to go with your points. And so you could make your main character like more of a tank, mage, whatever you wanted. Final Fantasy 12 took that and ran off with it. I think they ran a little too far with it, but it was cool. Like, the Sphere Grid was a nice mechanic. It also it gave some agency to the player, and it just kept me more engaged than just seeing like some experience points go up. Like, you would see those S levels and get geeked because you're like, oh man, sweet. And then on top of like needing that S level to move the board, you also needed nodes. So like maybe you didn't have an HP node, so you could not unlock that HP sphere that would give your character more health points. But you had enough S levels to keep going, but you didn't want to keep moving because you had to unlock that one.
Like, oh no, I got to get to this specific ability.
Yeah, there was just so much to it that I loved. And the other one I want to mention, of course, I always have to mention almost every episode, is Shenmue, right? I love the investigation mechanics in Shenmue. I've never experienced anything like it, right? Where basically the objective of Shenmue is to find your father's murderer. That's all I'm going to say. And you're in a small town in Japan. And so your father's murdered, you're a high school boy, and you basically leave your house, and you're like, I'm going to find this guy.
Like, go get him.
What do you do? Like, what would you do in reality? It's
there's no waypoint marker. There's
no
You
markers,
can't go to your inventory, and it's like, go speak to this person.
Nothing.
None of that.
You have a journal that actively updates as you find, like, new clues. But literally, the developers built this mechanic and they based it on the fact that, okay, so this boy has to find this guy. How do we do this? Well, in real life, you would just ask your neighbors. So they voiced and wrote lines for every single NPC. They wrote different schedules for them that happens throughout the day, throughout the month. There's seasons. So like if you play the game and it takes you too long,
effort.
I mean, just pure effort. And it just was the mechanics are fun to this day because like that's one of those games like where if you haven't played in a while, you might not remember what to do, but it doesn't matter. Your story will be different every time because you're going to talk to different people than you had.
You'll go back into it.
Yes, and so I got to give a shout out to that one. That investigation mechanic was amazing.
Man, so ultimately, I mean, there are even genres of games. We might have to do a game mechanics part 2.
We might,
because there's MMOs, there's turn-based games.
Yeah.
There are whole realms of
Racing.
gameplay mechanics, racing that we haven't even touched on today. So,
That's true.
Listeners, let us know if you want to hear game mechanics part 2. If you want to hear more of us talking about the game mechanics that we love or that we think are amazing or that we think are crap.
And we want you guys to just try some of these games. If you heard about a game today that you didn't know about, go out, try it, comment, tell us, write us. Just tell us if you like it. Tell us the games that you'd like us to try or talk about. Any mechanics that you love, feel free to tell us and we'll go out and talk about them. Mechanics, like people don't really talk about, but these are really what make these games fun. Just one little side tangent, right? I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake with somebody recently, and I was doing a part where at the very beginning of the game, you're sneaking out of some tunnel, whatever it is. And so there's a part where you have to walk through this tunnel, and then there's like a little wall, like a caved-in wall, you have to shimmy in between. And the person I was playing with is like, God, go faster. Like, why is this taking so long? And I was like, when I first played that game, I was like, this is awesome. But then when that person said that, I was like, damn, this is a terrible mechanic. Like, it slows the pace down like too much. Like I want to, like, now that I've actually done this once, it doesn't hold up well because I want to just keep playing. Like,
and that's something. I'll bring this back up, but you instantly makes me think of Metal Gear Solid 4 because that is a game, but like for so many reasons beloved by me and other people. But I had there were certain parts of that game that I had that same reaction to, where I was just grinding my teeth and I was like, go faster.
Yeah.
But that's a story for another day.
Absolutely.
Suffice to say, game mechanics, among other reasons, are the whole reason we're gamers.
Absolutely.
I mean, the whole reason games exist is because it's not just a story. It's a game. It's something you play through and something you experience. So,
for sure.
Power. Game mechanics. If you were to give them a rating, what
I got to
would you give them?
It may be a shocker to you and all our listeners. I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 Power Stones.
It's funny you say that because I am right there with you with 5 out of 5 Titanite shards.
Okay.
Top scores.
There we go.
And with that, thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in. If you want to hit us up with your feedback, anything we got incorrect, or your thoughts on this, email us at powerandresetpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes,
that is powerandresetpodcast@gmail.com. Can't wait to hear from you. And as always, power up. And if you don't like it, reset.